Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. One of the things that just irritated me about the Biden administration was their insistence that white supremacy was our nation's number one security threat. Yeah, remember that? It just came from everywhere. Anyone with two brain cells to rub together knew that this was so far from the truth, it wasn't even funny. So let's look at what happened just recently to see what the real threat is and what can be done about it. President Donald Trump just yesterday posted this. He said, Americans chant death to America on U.S. soil in Dearborn, and it's not Tehran. While the regime in Iran chants hatred from afar, a crowd in Dearborn, Michigan brought the same venom straight to America's streets during the International Al-Quds Day rally. A speaker invoked Ayatollah Khomeini, explaining why the founder of Iran's Islamic Republic called for Americans to direct their rage at the United States. Quote, and this is why Imam Khomeini, who declared the International Day of Quds, the speaker said, this is why he would say to pour all of your chants and all of your shouts upon the head of America, unquote. The crowd responded, of course, with thunderous, applause, and they said, "Death to America! Death to America! Death to America!" The speaker then quoted Malcolm X to hammer home the point. Quote, "We live in one of the rottenest countries that has ever existed on this earth," unquote. This isn't fringe rhetoric from overseas enemies. It's happening in the heart of America, in a city that's become a hotspot for such displays, often tied to pro-Iranian or anti-Israel activism. Open borders and unchecked radicalism have allowed this poison to take root here. When people come to this country and immediately chant for its destruction, it's not free speech, it's a warning sign we ignore at our own peril. Time to wake up. The real threat isn't just over there, it's right here, shouting in our faces. So you may say, well, Doug, that's over the top. Come on. It can't be really that bad. It's just a few radicals that, probably are paid by somebody, chanting death to America. Well, let's take a look. Just this week, police rushed to a large Jewish synagogue in West Bloomfield Township, Michigan, after an attacker rammed his vehicle into the building and opened fire Thursday afternoon. The Daily Wire has several reporters saying that the attacker targeted Temple Israel, which is the largest Reform congregation in the United States. Aerial footage showed smoke pouring out of the building as first responders rushed into the synagogue. A law enforcement source confirmed to the Daily Wire that the shooter was armed with a rifle and rammed a car into the synagogue before being killed by armed security in a shootout. The vehicle, which the attacker drove through the doors of the building, caught on fire, and the shooter's body was burned. The security guard at the synagogue engaged the attacker, and shots were fired, according to Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard. The shooter was found dead in the vehicle. One security guard was injured after he was hit by the attacker's vehicle, but he's expected to recover, and 30 law enforcement officers were also treated at the hospital for smoke inhalation after they ran into the smoke-filled synagogue to identify any potential threats and locate any victims. The sheriff told reporters that no one else in the synagogue was injured. And Temple Israel also has a preschool and runs a drive-through food pantry on Thursday, according to its website. Now, obviously, this wasn't part of the drive-through here, in case you were wondering. But Chef Bouchard said everyone in the preschool had been accounted for. Authorities were still working on to secure the area and ensure that there wasn't a second attacker who might have escaped and fled on foot. Schools in the area remained in lockdown for quite some time, and the FBI was also on the scene and is now leading the investigation, which they are calling targeted act of violence against a Jewish community. Quote, FBI personnel are on the scene with partners in Michigan and responding to the apparent vehicle ramming and active shooter situation out of Temple Israel Synagogue in West Bloomfield Township, Michigan. This is what FBI Director Kash Patel said. The FBI held an active shooter prevention preparedness training for the clergy and staff at the temple in January. Yeah, this is quite interesting. And we're going to get into that here in just a second. But following the reports of the attack, Jewish organizations were told to go into lockdown, saying that we are aware of a security incident at Temple Israel. We are advising all Jewish organizations to go into lockdown protocol. Nobody in or out of your building. More information to follow is what the Jewish Federation of Detroit said. Like I say, the aerial footage showed, the smoke coming out of the synagogue, and officers with long guns walking near the building. Some obviously went in to try to make sure that nobody was in there. And after the attack, Temple Israel released a statement on social media confirming that all 140 students in our Susan and Harold Loss Early Childhood Center, our amazing staff, our courageous teachers, and our heroic security personnel are all accounted for and safe. As you have no doubt heard, Temple Israel was the victim of a terrorist gunman who was confronted and neutralized by our security personnel, who are truly heroes, is what they released. Now you remember, this isn't the only terrorist attack. He said in 2022, a Muslim man named Hassan Choker, he drove through the synagogue parking lot at Temple Beth El, a large Reformed synagogue in nearby Bloomfield Township, Michigan, as well, and shouted anti-Semitic threats toward preschoolers and their parents. After Choker was told to leave, he went to a gun store in Dearborn, Michigan, and tried to buy multiple firearms. He was sentenced to 34 months in prison last September. Last September, a man rammed his truck into a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan, before getting out and opening fire. 4 people were killed in that attack before police killed the attacker. One of the things that we talked about here just a second ago, and I wanted to get into a little bit more, the FBI agents provided an active shooter training seminar for leadership and staff at Temple Israel in Michigan, just 6 weeks before the armed security at the synagogue successfully stopped that shooter on the premises. The FBI Detroit field office shared a photo and some information about the training on January 30th of this year, as 2 special agents joined Temple Israel's clergy and staff members to walk them through active shooter scenarios and drills that could help them to prepare for that unthinkable thing that, of course, actually happened. Quote, FBI Detroit led an active shooter attack prevention and preparedness, or ASAPP, training for the clergy and staff of Temple Israel in West Bloomfield. The post read that the FBI course combines lessons learned from years of research and employs scenario-based exercises to help participants practice the decision-making process of the run, hide, fight principles and take necessary actions for survival. Another quote: "We appreciate them for having us. Our division has partnered with many organizations in Michigan and is committed to protecting schools, workplaces, houses of worship, medical facilities, transportation centers, government facilities, and other public gathering sites and communities." This is what the Post concluded, encouraging other organizations to reach out for access to similar training by saying, "Contact us or your local FBI field office for questions regarding active shooter training." Of course, just 6 weeks later, on March 12th, that shooter attacked the massive synagogue, ramming the building with his vehicle first, and armed with a rifle. Security personnel on site were able to quickly evaluate the situation and engage the shooter. And the security guard at the temple engaged that attacker, and shots were fired. And according to Oakland County Sheriff, the shooter was found dead in the vehicle. The one security guard, of course, was injured as he was hit by the attacker's vehicle, but he's expected to recover. And so, I guess the question is why did the FBI, why have they felt it so necessary if, this isn't a big deal, if this isn't a security threat, if white supremacy is our number one threat in this country, why was this what they chose to offer to the synagogue? But it actually goes even deeper in this case. Again, the Daily Wire reports a violent synagogue terror attack in Michigan is taking on an even darker dimension after new intelligence reveals a chilling connection. The attacker's brother was a Hezbollah terrorist commander responsible for rocket attacks on Israeli citizens. According to official Israeli Defense Forces social media account, Hezbollah commander Ibrahim Mohammed Ghazali oversaw weapons operations inside the group's Badr unit, a branch responsible for launching hundreds of rockets towards Israeli civilian areas during the war. His brother, Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, carried out the terror attack in Michigan on Thursday, where armed synagogue security guards, of course, exchanged gunfire with him during the confrontation, and his body was later found burned inside the vehicle that he rammed the building with. Now, Israeli forces reportedly eliminated Ibrahim Ghazali in an Israeli Air Force strike on Hezbollah military structure just days before the synagogue attack unfolded in the United States. And the newly revealed family connection is now prompting investigators to take a closer look at whether the Michigan attacker had deeper ties with the Iran-backed terror group. Hezbollah is designated by the United States as a foreign terrorist organization, and the group has spent decades building global networks while carrying out attacks against Israeli and Western targets. Authorities have not yet said whether the terrorists had direct operational ties to Hezbollah or whether the attack was carried out independently. But the discovery that his brother served as a weapons commander inside the group is likely to intensify scrutiny around the case, of course. But this isn't the only attack. You may say, well, yeah, that was a one-off, whatever, but the gunman who opened fire at a Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, on the very same day has been identified as Mohammed Baylor Jalal. He's a former National Guard soldier who was previously convicted of supporting ISIS, according to multiple reports. Jalal, he's 36, discussed plans to carry out a Fort Hood-style attack with a government informant he believed was an ISIS terrorist, according to NBC4 Washington. And Jalal was sentenced to 11 years behind bars and an additional 5 years of supervised release. Of course, he was let out early in December of 2024, according to the New York Post. And Jalal traveled to Africa and with his father in 2015, where he met with an ISIS recruiter, according to that same NBC4. The same year that he went to Sierra Leone to stay with the group's facilitator and planned to go to Libya to join the terrorist organization, but that never happened. At one point, he actually ventured to Niger, to join ISIS, and even boarded a truck full of other terror recruits, but bailed after 18 hours, according to NBC4. Jalal praised the gunman who killed 5 soldiers in Chattanooga, Tennessee in July of 2015. He did that to the informant, according to the Department of Justice. And he also sent $500 to a man he believed was an ISIS member, who was actually an undercover FBI agent, by the way. He pleaded guilty in October of 2015 to attempting to provide material support to ISIS. And Jalal, who is a naturalized American citizen, I'm going to say that again. He's a naturalized American citizen from Sierra Leone, stormed into a classroom, of course, on Thursday and asked if it was an ROTC course, according to the New York Post. When someone confirmed that it was, he opened fire, shooting the professor several times. The professor, a retired military officer, died at the hospital, according to the news outlet. One of the students heroically stabbed Jalal to death to stop him from harming others. And FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed on X that one person is dead and 2 others were wounded in that shooting. The shooter, he said, is now deceased thanks to a group of brave students who stepped in and subdued him, actions that undoubtedly saved lives along with the quick response of law enforcement. Quote, the FBI is now investigating the shooting as an act of terrorism. Our Joint Terrorism Task Force is fully engaged, embedded with local authorities, and providing all resources necessary in the investigation, Patel said. Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, said the injured victims were Army personnel, and the shooting occurred hours before an attacker armed and rammed a vehicle into that Michigan synagogue that we just talked about. But again, I want to bring a bit of good news to this story. I don't want this whole post and this whole podcast to be negative, because there were some in both of these cases really some real heroes stepped forward. The FBI Kash Patel credited brave students with saving many lives by stopping a gunman who carried out the suspected terror attack at the Old Dominion University on Thursday. Now, the gunman has been identified as Mohammed Baylor Jahal, as we've been talking about, a former Virginia National Guardsman who was convicted in 2016 of conspiring to provide material support for ISIS. And of course, we talked about the reserve officer, the ROTC student who stopped the gunman with his knife. Now, 2 ROTC members were injured in that attack, but during a press conference on Thursday afternoon, the FBI spoke about the students who subdued the killer. Quote, there were students that were in the room that subdued him and rendered him no longer alive, said Dominic Evans, a special agent in charge of the FBI's Norfolk office, saying they basically were able to terminate the threat. Evans also noted that Jalal yelled, Allah Akbar. Yeah, surprising, right? During his attack. I know you're shocked. I know. I can hear it. I know you're shocked that he would yell Allah Akbar. Quote, we are deeply saddened from the active shooter incident that occurred at the Old Dominion University on March 12th of 2026. And we can confirm that 2 members of the university ROTC program were shot and were taken to local hospitals to treat their injuries, is what the U.S. Army Cadet Commander said in a statement. Now, Patel confirmed on Thursday that the FBI was on the scene and assisting police in investigating the attack. So, yeah, I mean, there's just another on the very day, on the exact same day, another attack. Not by white supremacists, though. Neither one of these were. Both of them were brought into this country came into this country, became citizens of this country. But they aren't the only ones. In fact, if you just go back just a little bit, I mean, we're talking about what, a week now? Emeril Balat, he's 18, and Ibrahim Keumi, I believe is how you pronounce that, he's 19, are accused of attempting to throw homemade bombs into a crowd of people and police officers outside Gracie Mansion in New York City Saturday. And this was a week Saturday, anyway. Officers quickly arrested the duo after one of the bombs was thrown. By Saturday evening, police Commissioner Jessica Tisch addressed the public, confirming that the devices were a bit smaller than a football, to be a jar wrapped in black tape, importantly with nuts and bolts and screws, along with a hobby fuse that could be lit. The devices, in Blatt's own words, were intended to carry out an attack bigger than the Boston Marathon, which Blatt noted caused only 3 deaths. So he was disappointed by that. From Pennsylvania, Blatt and Keumi reportedly traveled to New York City and carried out their attack. After Blatt was arrested on Saturday, authorities located a car registered in Blatt's family member's name and found footage of the vehicle crossing the George Washington Bridge into New York City at 11:36 a.m. on Sunday. Now, Blatt and Keumi lived 10 miles from each other in Pennsylvania. Blatt is enrolled at Neshaminy High School in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, and Keumi graduated from Council Rock High School in 2024. Blatt's lawyer, Mendy Asmini, claimed to reporters that the men did not know each other prior to the attack. Says they're strangers as far as I know, and he added that they are in different age groups. Yeah, that's lawyer speak, because one's 18, one's 19. They're not in different age groups. But anyway, an official with Neshaminy High School shared with the Daily Wire that Blatt was enrolled in the district's virtual academy. So he had not attended in-person classes since September. But the lawyer said that he's finishing school remotely because he has only 3 classes left to do. Now, when arrested, both of them referred to ISIS in recorded post-arrest statements. And Blatt pledged his allegiance to the Islamic State in a piece of paper at the police detention center. And Keumi said that he was affiliated with ISIS and watched ISIS propaganda on his phone. Authorities have since searched Blatt and Keumi's devices as well as their homes. Blatt lived in Langhorne in a home estimated to be worth $653,000. Keumi lived in a home worth $2.25 million. Keumi's parents were originally from Afghanistan and became naturalized citizens in 2004 and 2009. Repeat that. Keumi's parents were originally from Afghanistan and became naturalized citizens in 2004 and 2009. Both Blatt and Keumi traveled internationally in the last 2 years. Blatt left the United States for about 4 months, traveling to Istanbul, Turkey, from May 6th of 2025 to August 26th of 2025. And in January of this year, Blatt left the country again, traveling to Turkey. And like Blatt, Keumi also went to Istanbul, but in July and August of 2024. He also traveled to Saudi Arabia in March of that year. So we could go on and on and on with different stories and true news about naturalized citizens that are from other countries, have no intentions of assimilating themselves into this country and our society and being Americans. They are Islamic terrorists. That's what they want. They shout death to America. They don't want what is best for this country. They don't want what is best for you. So what can be done about it? What can be done about this type of stuff? Well, of course, Mohammed Bayar Jahal, the ex National Guard soldier, previously convicted of terrorism charges, and opened fire, of course, on the Old Dominion University, killing that decorated service member, professor. Well, he's originally from Sierra Leone, and is the latest naturalized American citizen to commit a violent attack in the United States. There have been at least 3 attacks carried out by naturalized citizens in the last 2 weeks. These are the ones that we just talked about. And this is leading many to call for changes to the naturalization process that allows these attackers into the country. But it's not that simple. Quote, if a naturalized U.S. citizen commits a heinous act of terrorism, that's not a way to take away somebody's citizenship, is what an immigration attorney, Matthew Culkin, told the Daily Wire. He said, they've done everything right from an immigration standpoint. The law does not allow you to just take away somebody's citizenship. They can be convicted of a crime and go to jail for the rest of their life, but they'll die in the United States and as a citizen, he said. Now, Jalal, for instance, was sentenced to 11 years in prison, as we talked about, with another 5 years of suspended release in his terrorism case, and was let out early in December of 2024. Now, if the feds wanted to denaturalize Jalal, they would have had to have found evidence of fraud tied to his immigration case. Quote, we're not talking about a crime. We're talking about an immigration law violation, he said. Now, even though you want, and this is a quote, even though the United States wants to denaturalize somebody because they engaged in an act of terrorism and murdered people in this country, the way that you would effectuate a denaturalization is if you discover a fraud that was not disclosed in furtherance of their immigration journey, is what Culkin said. Now, in addition to committing immigration fraud, an individual can become denaturalized if they join the Communist Party or another subversive organization within 5 years of gaining citizenship. This is what George Fishman, senior fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, said. But Fishman warned that denaturalization is tough, adding that in Jalal's case, unless the government can come up with evidence that he lied, he concealed a material fact during his naturalization, I'm not sure there's really any viable way forward, he said. Naturalized citizens can also lose their citizenship if they are discharged from the military under other than honorable conditions after obtaining citizenship based on their military service, according to United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. They must have been discharged before having served honorably for at least 5 years. The federal government naturalized 818,500 new citizens in fiscal year 2024, which ran between October 2023, and September of 2024, according to federal data. And with the mountain of cases, it may be difficult to go back and audit those who've already been naturalized, is what Fishman said, adding that the federal government should be much more deliberate in deciding whether to naturalize someone in the first place. For any future cases, Congress could toughen the standards for naturalization, Fishman said. Let's talk about that in a second. Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt, he's a Republican, has introduced legislation to make it easier for the United States to denaturalize immigrants who pose a national security threat. Yeah, let's talk about this. His proposed legislation, the Stop Citizenship Abuse and Misrepresentation Act, or SCAM Act, seeks to denaturalize those who commit welfare fraud and aggravated felonies and espionage. It also applies to individuals with ties to drug cartels or foreign terroristic groups. So, and this is what he said on X. He said, we must denaturalize those who shouldn't be here. What an interesting thought, that we must denaturalize those who shouldn't be here. You see, if you come here and you hate this country and you don't want anything to do with our society, and you just simply want to chant death to America and do terroristic things, why shouldn't you be denaturalized? I think this is what we need. We need to make it easier for those that we have given the privilege, and it is a privilege, we have given them the privilege of coming into our country and assimilating with us to be Americans and to move our country forward in a great fashion. And yet they have taken that privilege and they have spit on it, and they have basically have shot it. They have murdered it. They want to try to, well, kill America. Death to America. And if that's your purpose, if that's what you want to see done, then you shouldn't be a U.S. citizen. It's that simple. I would love to hear from you on it. Of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Thank you very much for listening.
This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.